I'm only taking one step at a time towards healing myself. I had to get out, I found a way out. No more living in pain or misery. It's all about protecting my energy. Keep the negative away from me, because I am just keeping my peace. Cut off everything that no longer was serving me, and I chose to start loving myself. I walk in my purpose, no looking back, I'm only going within. B.O. standing there, a better version of me. I must say that I'm proud of me. It's not about how you feel, I'm living proof that God is real. So let me show you how to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, cause I came a long way. My journey isn't yet complete, that's what it look like to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, I'm proud of myself. It's nothing to it, you can do it, all you gotta do is just fight through it. Creative soul, creative soul, creative soul. Just fight through it. Creative soul, creative soul, creative soul, creative soul, yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Pain to Purpose podcast, where we have open discussions to heal together as a community. Today, we're on episode 47, and we're talking about being undiagnosed. And our special guest is Soul2Soul. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm good. And yourself?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Did you have a good day today?
I did. I did. I did. And you?
I did. I had a great day, and I'm excited for this interview. So let's get into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I appreciate you for having me.
You're welcome. So give us a little information about you.
As far as the story or
Tell us a
just
little
other
bit
little
about
tidbits, fun stuff.
fun stuff.
Um, s- I am a twin. I have a twin sister.
Okay.
Um, Her and I both have been singing in the choir and on our praise and worship team at the same church since we were babies. My
Oh,
father was the founding pastor. Um, and we are now 50 years old. This year, my dad's church will be celebrating 53 years
okay.
being organized. And my sister and I are still there. I was ordained as a missionary over 11 years ago.
Okay.
My sister is married to a deacon. And so we are very active in our church. Um, I own my own private duty care business. I take care of hospice patients as they're transitioning to the next life. I've had that for 4 years now.
Okay.
And I am married with 4 children.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's about it.
All right. So let's get into this story. Tell us about the pain that pushed you to your purpose.
Yes. So last year on March the 28th of 2024, I was undiagnosed after a 15 and a half year diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Um, in 2009, I was officially diagnosed with MS. Um,
So can you
only to
tell us
find out,
about the day that you were diagnosed?
yes. So I was at work, and it was around 2:30, and it was our time where we sit down, and we do documentation. A coworker had gone out to lunch earlier that day, and she
Mhm.
came back with some cookies. And she's like, would you like a cookie? And I'm like, yeah, I'll take one. And it was one of the big cookies with the M&Ms in it.
Okay.
And literally, I sat down, opened the cookie, and the moment I bit the cookie,
Mhm.
the right side of my face went completely numb, like
Oh, jeez.
numb. And I was sitting there and I'm like, I can't feel my face. And they're all looking at me like, what? I'm like, I can't feel my face. I'm like, I just bit that cookie and my face is numb. So, I have been working with these ladies for over 8 to 9 years. So,
Mhm.
we had a relationship and they're all, oh my God, it could be Bell's palsy or it could be a stroke. And I'm like, why are y'all saying all of that? Because I bit a cookie. I
Mhm.
just bit a cookie. I believe
Right.
I got some candy in my tooth. It might have hit a nerve.
Mhm.
So I'll go ahead and go down to the dentist. I was actually 20 minutes away from my dentist office. So
Okay.
I was able to get there by 3 o'clock. Got there, told him the story about me biting a cookie and told him, hey, cookie, some of this sugar got into a nerve. So I need you to tell me what to do. He ran all the x-rays he could possibly run and he did an oral exam of my mouth. And he said, no, there's nothing. You might want to go see your primary. So I'm like, go see my primary doctor for face numbness? And he said, yes. And I'm like, okay. So that office was about 20 minutes away.
Okay.
And I had been seeing this primary since I was 18 years old. I was 34 at the time. And so I get there, I told him what happened, and he's like, and the dentist said it's not the tooth. And he said no. He's done x-rays. So he said, let me call a neurology friend of mine. And
Okay.
he got me an appointment to go to this office within the next day. Like I literally went the very next day. During that appointment, I explained to this doctor the same story I told everybody about the cookie. He then said, what we're going to need to do is an MRI. Um, when you go out to the desk, they'll schedule it, and I'll call you with the results about a week or so when they come in. So God, in that moment, He was already moving because I went out to the desk and the receptionist said, we have a cancellation for tomorrow for MRI. Do you
Okay.
want to go? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Wow. Because again, in my head, I'm saying, let's get this MRI out the way because I know this was because of a cookie. So I got the MRI. I also remembered that the neurologist said that they would call me back with the results in about a week.
Okay.
He called me 2 hours after the MRI and said, I need you to come in my office tomorrow morning at 7:30. And I just instantly said, okay, they had to find something. Get to the office that next morning at 7:30, and he turns the monitor around. We were not in the doctor's office, the regular exam room. We were in his office.
Mhm.
And he turned his monitor around. He said, this is your brain stem, and this is your lesion. Your lesion is at the top of your brain stem. You have multiple sclerosis. Um,
So wait a minute, and this is the neurologist. This is the friend of the primary care doctor.
he was, yep, a neurologist that my primary knew.
Okay.
Yeah. And he said, we have to treat you aggressively. In African Americans, multiple sclerosis runs rampant. So we need to get you on medication and get you on medication right away. So I'm like, oh, wow. So am I dying? Like, is that what you're telling me? He said, you're not dying today, but ultimately this will be what you die from, multiple sclerosis. And I
Were
just
you
sat.
there by yourself that day?
No, my husband was with me.
Okay, okay.
Um, yeah, my husband was with me. And I began to ask questions like, okay, so what does the treatment look like? Because you said aggressively treat me. So what does that treatment look like? And he was like, first thing we're going to do is put you on some steroids to kind of get the feeling back in your face and then go from there. And then I'm like, okay. I had never had steroids before, never knew anything about pharmaceutical injections or anything. Um, he did explain to me what I would be taking. He did explain that I would be injecting um, one time a week. The first injection was one time a week, and that it would be delivered on ice, and then he would put me on certain pills to take. So I go back out, and he wanted me to schedule a follow up to see how I was doing after starting the medication and as well as the injections. And I
Mhm.
remember walking out to the car, and I got to the car, and my husband was opening the door, and I just fell to the ground and started screaming and crying. And I just was crying and screaming and crying because it was just like I was given a death sentence. Um, I was trying so hard to be strong and be able to handle this information, but it was just hearing those words that you are very sick. Um, I freaked out. I called my sister, and she was very positive. Like, listen, you trust God. Whose report are you gonna believe? God got you. Stop crying. We'll get through this. And then I called my mom, and my mom, she just started crying. She was crying like, oh my God, no, no, no.
Mhm.
And my children were very young at the time. So for me, it was going home and trying to figure out how to tell my kids. Because again, I didn't know how bad the lesion was. I just know what he said. You are African American, and MS runs wild and rampant in African American people, and we need to aggressively treat you. Um, Maybe a year later, I went to a different neurologist, different practice, different hospital to see if I would fit in better with this medical team. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so that neurologist did paperwork. And one of the questions I remember now that the doctor asked me was, what made me choose to come to that clinic? After being diagnosed somewhere else. I said, well, I really didn't feel comfortable after the way, this man sat and said, this is what's going to kill you. It was just so, no bedside manner, just
Mhm.
straightforward, direct. And I just didn't feel the compassion. So this other neurologist came highly recommended by some coworkers.
Okay.
So I went to see him. Turned out this was even more of a nightmare because every appointment you saw somebody totally different. It didn't matter who you were under, you literally saw a different person every appointment. And that to me was not personable for what I was going through, what my body was experiencing. It was
Mhm.
like every time I went to the doctor, I am in the middle of like an orientation with somebody regarding my health
Trying to explain what's going on with your body all over again.
all over for every appointment. So I'm like, okay, got to go back over to this practice because it was a private practice. Where I had gone to was a hospital practice. So I go back to the private practice. And by this time, I'm on a lot of medication, but I'm still working. I'm still going to work. I'm taking all my meds, but my body is starting to feel a lot of changes. I'm starting to
Mhm.
feel a lot of different things like aching and just hard to go up the stairs, and my children coming home from school and finding me passed out on the ground.
Oh,
Uh,
Jesus.
me not knowing how long I've been down there. And each time one of these major events would happen, I would go to the hospital. I had to have over, in the past 15 years, I would say I've had at least 40 hospital stays,
Okay.
all from what they called multiple sclerosis flare.
So when
So,
you were going to the doctor, well, the hospitals, when these flares were happening, the hospitals were telling you you had it too.
yes, they were looking, what the doctors at the hospital was doing, was looking at my chart, looking to see how my neurologist would treat my flares and then do the same thing. So if I had a flare and I caught the flare at home, I would call the office what I considered a flare. And when I say flare, I mean the body aches, the pain that no matter what you take, it nothing takes it away. Um, the passing out, just really sick. I would call and then they would have me come in and I would do a round of infusions, which was 3 times a week. They would place an IV in my arm. I would get the first treatment. They would wrap that IV up. I would keep it in my arm and I would go back for the next 2 days and I would do 3 days infusions. If it was really, really bad where I had to be rushed to the hospital, they just would do the infusions, but do them in the hospital, um, to get me comfortable and get me out of pain. And as the time went on, the pains never got better, it got worse. So I'm in my mind saying my MS is really running rampant. And this is what the man told me.
Mhm.
He said in African Americans, multiple sclerosis runs rampant. And he didn't lie because guess what? It's running rampant. And that was where I was. And I remember going to the hospital and to different doctors and saying, listen, don't let me die. Please don't let me die. Tell me what I can do. I want to see my kids graduate high school. I want to see my kids get married and have grandkids. Just please, please help me.
Mhm.
And each doctor would let me do another MRI. Oh, we're going to change now. We got your MRI back. We're going to put you on a different pharmaceutical drug, but now you're going to inject 3 times a week instead of one. So now we're going to go to 3. And I did that, only got worse. But again,
So they
each
were
time,
having you, so
go ahead.
allegedly they were having you think that if you took these injections, it was going to help you live a little longer.
Absolutely. It would, if with
But
the
it was doing
inject,
the opposite.
exactly. The injections were supposed to slow down the growth of the lesion. So each MRI, from what it was explained to me in the very beginning, each time you have an MRI, they measure the size of the lesion. And if you get an MRI and the lesion grows, then they would say, yep, we're going to put you on a prednisone taper. We're going to increase, we're going to start you on a seizure med. And they would just add medications to say, yeah, this lesion is getting bigger, and document that I had the MRI and the lesion, changed sizes and this, that, and the third, and it's getting bigger. And oh my God, it's at the top of your brainstem. And if it gets too big, you're going to be paralyzed, you're going to be blind. So we got to get this medicine in you to slow this thing down. So the more I injected, the worse I felt. But it they made you think that it was giving you longer life, if it makes sense. I'm injecting, I'm in pain, but I have some good days because the injections and all the medications is giving me those limited good days. So count your blessings and keep taking your medicine, and you may be here a little bit longer, you know. Um, and it went on for many years. So in 2016, I had been switched to my third pharmaceutical injection in 2016, the beginning of 2016.
Mhm.
And by this time, I've had many hospital stays, tons of, I can't even count. I was having infusions at one time. I was going twice a month, to the point where they couldn't even give me no more prednisone because they had given me a dangerous amount of prednisone, because that's just how sick I had been. And when I was in the hospital, they're like, mm-mm, because I ended up developing what they called prednisone induced diabetes. By you taking so many steroids, it caused my sugar to go up so high that I became a diabetic.
Oh,
It changed my heart rate. Like my baseline for my heart rate is 114. So my heart beats at 114. And every year I have to have a cardio workup, just to make sure that my heart is, not at the point where I need medication. I developed severe migraines. Um, and at one point, I was at maybe 300 and something pounds from all the medicine. I was huge, huge. And you can imagine being that young, you know, having
and the
a husband.
prednisone alone has you to gain weight.
Oh, listen, the prednisone gives you insomnia. The prednisone will tell your mind that you didn't eat and you just sat there and had two smothered pork chops, some rice gravy, and green beans. And the prednisone going to make you think that you never had a meal at all, that you didn't eat nothing. And so you're going to sit down and you're going to eat again. And then you're going to eat. And it just, that appetite is there. And then you get the round prednisone face. They call it the prednisone face. You could tell when somebody's on prednisone because they get that round face, that look. Um, and so, yeah, I had been on that so much that it was just like second nature, for me to take that. And by this time, I think I was on about 12 pills along with the injections 3 times a day. And I developed a pain in my head that I wasn't even able to describe it to the paramedics, to the doctors, to the emergency room doctors. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced in my head in my life.
Mm.
Um, so while I was in the hospital, they were like, okay, we're gonna give you something to keep you comfortable, but you need, and this was the thing too. When you go to the hospital and you have MS or any neurological disease, they contact the neurology department.
Mhm.
Each time a neurologist will come down um, to the ER to see me, they would always say, we'll give you something to make you comfortable, but we want you to follow up with your doctor. They would never make decisions. They would never change anything. They would never add medications. They would just politely say, you're going to have to follow up with your neurologist. We'll get you comfortable and get you home, but we don't want to change anything. Go see them. And it's making sense now. Um, so I go to the neurologist and say, look, I can't work. I can't get out the bed. I'm laying in there. I was in my bed screaming and crying. Like I'm telling you, screaming and crying. That's how painful. It hurt to brush my teeth. It hurt to put on my glasses. It hurt to turn sideways. It hurt to sneeze. It just wasn't normal. It wasn't. It was so bad. I begged God, please take me home. I can't stay here. This is not living. This is not living. This is not how it's supposed to be. God, please take me home. So they said, we want you to go to another neurologist who specializes in a disease called trigeminal neuralgia. So what they said is that because I had multiple sclerosis,
Mhm.
people develop a disease called trigeminal neuralgia from having multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
This is very typical when a person has MS. So I went to go see the new neurologist, and he said, yep, this is very common. I see this all the time with patients that have MS, um, but we can fix it. We can do a brain surgery. And I'm like, a brain surgery? He said, yes. He said, we can do it two ways. He said, I've done many thousands of these, but I can only do it by shaving your head and going in the old fashioned way by opening your head up. But there's some new doctors that just got out of school and know the new technology, and they're able to go through your face and go up to your brain. Three little holes, and then we'll go up to your brain. I'm like, yeah, let me go home and think about that, because now you're talking about playing in my head. That's a little different than writing a prescription. And things happen all the time. Doctors, they open your head up, you get infection, and just the fear of this surgery, I had to come home and pray. So the pain was so bad that the next day I said, we're gonna do it. This hurts too bad. If the surgery is gonna stop this pain, then yes, I want it done, because I cannot take another day of this pain. So within about 2 weeks, I ended up having the surgery. The recovery was very painful the very first 4 days. The pain, it was worse than prior to having the surgery. But how it ended was you would have like 45 minutes of pain to where you're on the floor on your knees, and then it goes away. It's done. It's over. No more pain. You're good. It was like nothing never happened. And the neurologist said he had patients who would come back, and sometimes they would need it done every 6 months, every year, every 2 years. But most people do end up having to have it repeated.
Mhm.
I said, okay. So now I had that brain surgery, and I'm on more meds.
So they've added more meds to the ones that you're already taking,
Mm-hmm,
allegedly.
mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And again, all of this was documented. They have my information, care, which you can get access to your medical charts. So imagine opening your chart and reading your summary. You're reading what the doctor put in there, and you're seeing he said the lesion got bigger, patient was complaining of this, we put her on this, like we saw this, like it was just documented. You could just see the decline in every note. You could see where my whole life was just being outlined and I was declining rapidly. Um, I remember when my daughter was graduating from 12th grade, she was graduating with distinction. I was in the hospital. I begged. I begged the doctors to discharge me because I wanted to see my daughter walk that stage. And I had been in the hospital for over 2 weeks, and they were trying to figure out how to ease this pain. I begged and begged and begged. I got out of the hospital 3 hours before my daughter graduated, rushed home, got dressed, and made it to her graduation. She was um, she had to give the speech, the welcome address, And during her welcome address, she said, "My mom has been battling multiple sclerosis my entire high school life. And she was in the hospital this morning, but she was discharged 2 hours ago and she's here." And the entire auditorium stood up and clapped. And I couldn't do nothing but cry. I just couldn't do anything but cry because I knew I prayed and asked God to allow me to be able to see my children walk the stage. And it was very, very emotional because my kids saw me as well as my husband. I'm
Go ahead.
so sorry.
No, go
Um,
ahead.
my kids saw me and my husband my worst, at my worst. I I was also placed on another medication that like literally destroyed my bowels. You can imagine being a mom and a wife, having your kids have to bathe you in the bed, change you, in the bed, just watching this decline, watching your family members taking turns, who's going to come and sit with her today, um, who's going to help her tomorrow. I missed many a days of cooking meals for my children.
So it was like you were
It was,
literally living your life at this point as if it was over, and you're just
yes,
going through the
yep.
ropes at this point.
hmm hmm It was as if I was making the best out of my last days. I used to always tell my mom, I want my last days to be better than my first days. And my mom would tell me, "Stop saying that. Don't say that. You're not going nowhere. Stop saying that. Stop saying it." And I remember sitting in my room one day and I journaled. I used to keep a lot of documentation um, on what my symptoms were, when I started a medication, what the symptoms were, and what I thought might have got better or what I thought was worse. I would just document. But this particular day, I was in my room and I was writing my own obituary. I had decided, you know what? You might as well go ahead and write it out. Write it out the way you want it to be. And my daughter came in and was asking me what I was doing, and I said, "I'm just jotting some notes down." And she got the book and was looking at it. And I'll never forget. She was crying so hard and yelling, "Mommy, why are you doing this? Mommy, why are you writing this? Mommy, stop. Mommy, why are you thinking like this?" And she went and called my mother. And my mom then called me. And she's like, "What are you doing? You know, your daughter just called me and said you're sitting in your room writing your obituary." And I'm like, "Yeah." She was like, "You got to shake this off." And I'm like, "I can't." And I just broke down and I'm like, "I can't. I can only think about trying to make things easy for my family when I do pass away. I can only think about trying to have as much set up to make it as easy as possible for them to bury me. And getting this obituary written and all of my wishes out of the way, it's going to be a lot easier on them because again, my kids were teenagers and my husband, young, raising children. I wanted to make sure I left everything kind of itemized on how it should go so that it would be smooth and that the grieving process could start. But my family has grieved for the last 15 years. My whole family have watched me suffer for so many years that there was so much grief that was shared um, over these past 15 years. And I ended up having the pain return in 2017, the end of 2017. So I had the first brain surgery in 2016. The very end of 2017, it returned. So I go back and I tell the neurologist, what are we going to do? He goes, well, I can go in and this time I can operate on the other side. And let's see if that fixes it.
Another brain surgery?
hmm June of 2018. So I'm like, okay, here we go. So I had that surgery. After that surgery, there was a little shift in my mental. Um, I told myself, you know what? You're going to have to try and figure out a way to enjoy your last days. If that means get your little part-time job, go back to work, come out the house, but you're isolating yourself. You're going to and home, church and home. You, let's see if this will help you. Let's see if you get back into things. And so I did. I went back to work. I had not worked since 2011. I wasn't able to work. I couldn't I couldn't stay woke long enough. I was on so many meds that literally once I took my meds, I was asleep in an hour. And that was just my life. That was my life. So I went back to work. It was hard, but it was rewarding. It was rewarding. I felt good about myself. Um, Even though I still had the weight gain, I just really felt good about myself. So after that brain surgery in January 2019, I said, no more prednisone. Prednisone is destroying me. Like, I'm not going to be able to take prednisone. I'm going to have to do everything in my power not to get on prednisone because prednisone is a medication. It's a blessing and a curse. Um, the side effects, when you're coming off prednisone, the withdrawals, the mental health. Prednisone puts you through so much mentally. It makes you emotional. You could be getting up, going in the kitchen to get a glass of water and start crying, and you're going to cry for 2 hours. You don't even know why you're crying. You're just going to cry for 2 hours. And I was like, I got to figure out a way to get off of this. I got to reduce the stress in my life. I got to um, build a stronger relationship with God and walk in faith and just know that you could do this. Um, so then I said, I want to start my own business. The pandemic had hit, and there was such a need of people who wanted to pass away at home, didn't want to be in nursing homes. And a friend of mine said, Lorette, listen, you really need to figure out how to go and do this. You will be good at, assisting people with this. And I'm like, hospice? I mean, I can do care. I've done care all my life. That's all I've done. But I don't know if I could deal with people, getting ready to cross over every day. But I did it. And I was successful. And with me starting that business, my health insurance changed. Now, mind you, I was at this doctor's office since 2009. I called to schedule a follow up because, during the pandemic, a lot of the offices were closed or they had limited visits, but the neurology office stayed open. I called to schedule an appointment, and one of the questions they always ask is, have you moved? Phone number still the same. What about insurance? Nope, I have new insurance. Oh, we don't take that. So I can remember saying on that phone, what do you mean you don't take it? I've been coming there for the last 15 years, and you're telling me you're not going to take my insurance? You're not going to make no exceptions. You mean the doctors that's been following me all these years is going to tell me that I can no longer come there because my insurance changed and you guys don't take that? So what am I supposed to do? And she says, you'll need to call your primary and have them refer you to a neurologist that takes that insurance. Okay. I'll do that. So I did. Got the phone number of a neurology office, um, called to schedule the appointment, and they couldn't get me in until March of 2024. So I made the call in October. I was not able to be seen until March 28th. And I remember the date, not only because it was the day I was undiagnosed, but because it was so far away. And so I was just like, a person with MS, a person that had two brain surgeries, how can an office just say, we'll see you in 3 months? But I'm going to digress and we're going to go with that. Um, and I worked that day. Now, typically, if I'm going to go to the doctor and there's decisions to be made, or if I'm getting results, anything that I feel is going to be life changing, I always bring my husband with me. But I didn't take him this day because I literally said, I'm just going in, gonna be a little quick 15-minute. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Um, you're my new doctor. Let you see my face, I see your face, and then I'm gonna go on home. And I was one of the last patients of the day. I made sure I had my appointment that evening.
Mhm.
And I get there, and the nurse comes in and does the little blood pressure, regular checkup. And then the doctor walks in. This doctor walked in and looked right at me. Hi, how are you? I'm good. Introduced herself, said her name, and said, Can you tell me about your eyesight? And I'm like, My eyesight? And she's like, Yes. What's going on with your vision? Nothing. Nothing's going on with my vision right now. Um, there were times in the past I did lose my eyesight and, had to go on medication. Like, yeah. So she goes, hmm, tell me, what about the numbness in your face? Well, whenever I have a flare, from time to time, my face goes numb. Oh, she goes, okay. So I'm looking at her like, this is our first appointment. Like, why
Mhm.
are we even starting the conversation with that? Like, um, those were just weird questions to me. So if you've ever been followed with neurology, like when you first go in, they don't just jump to random events that happened over the years, like your eyesight or whatever. Um, so she goes, let me listen. Let me do an exam. So I said, okay. And she comes over and she listens to my chest and walks away. I'm like, why? What's wrong with this lady? Like, okay, we're gonna get through this appointment, but after I leave today, I'm gonna have to do some more research and I'm gonna have to find me somebody because, lady, you just said I'm gonna do your physical and check you over, and you just listened and backed up. And she backed right up and sat
Now
down.
you're thinking this is another doctor with bad bedside manners. And you
Exactly.
gave us- okay.
And I'm like, yeah, don't know what's going on in the medical world, but we got to get it together. And she looked over and she said, I don't know how to tell you this. Um, but you don't have MS and you never had MS. And I looked over and I said, What did you just say? She said, You don't have MS and you never had MS. I looked over your chart. I'm like, so you do know who I am, correct? She said, I know. You did get the right records. Do you want to verify my birth date? Like, it's got to be, you have to have me mixed up to stand here and say this. She said, No, I don't have you mixed up. So I said, You do know I had two brain surgeries. You do know I was diagnosed in 2009. She goes, Yes, I'm aware. Okay, so you do know I'm on Medicare. You do know I get Social Security. Um, you do? She said, Yeah. I go, So how is all of that possible? How? See, my brain went straight to the insurance, the Medicare, you know what I mean? Because you have to prove, you have to send
Mm.
documentation in for that. So
So
if you're,
she had your file
uh-huh,
and had all the documentation of everything that you have been through in that file, everything.
mhm, everything,
And she's telling you you don't have what they said you have.
exactly. So naturally, I'm thinking, well, what makes you think I'm gonna believe you? I just met you. I've been seeing these people for years. So you're gonna have to tell me how you came to that. You're gonna have to tell me. She said, I have reviewed all your medical records. I said, so did you see my MRIs? She said, that's what gave it away. I said, gave what away? She said, the MRIs never changed. So now I'm in the chair with my head like, what didn't change, ma'am? She said, the size of this lesion they said was on your brain. And I said, well, you did see where I was on all these pharmaceutical meds? She said, the chemicals that they prescribed for you to inject yourself with were unwarranted. I said, you do see that these medications was changed? She said, yes, I do. And each time they were unwarranted.
Oh my.
So now I'm saying, you want me, and I'm saying it just like this, you want me to believe that for the last 15 years, all these doctors been giving me medication for something I don't have, but putting in my paperwork that I got it? She said, when I read your paperwork, I said, this poor girl is going to be dead in a year,
Oh my.
maybe a half a year. But then I looked at the MRIs and it said something totally different. So now I'm crying. And as I'm crying, I'm saying to her, you want me to remember the hell I just went through for the last 15 years and know that I didn't have to? That these doctors did that to me? And I began to yell, why me? Why me? Why me? Why did they do that to me? I didn't deserve this. I'm like, do you know what my life has been like for these last 15 years? You have no idea. She said, I'm so sorry. So now I'm crying and I can barely I can barely breathe. And in my head, I'm just asking myself, how did people make the decision that I'm going to continue to treat this lady and give her these meds until she passes away? And she said, I can tell you every doctor, I can tell you every med, but I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to order you another MRI. And I'm going to show you that based on the MRI that I'm going to do in 2024 is going to be the same exact size as it was in 2009 and every MRI after that. There was never a reason for you to ever have been on these meds. So I said, then what were they supposed to do? You tell me. If I walked in your office in 2009 and I said, I lost feeling in my face, and you did an MRI, she said what they should have done, they should have monitored me for the next year and a half and ran more MRIs because the feeling came back. So all you had
How
to
long
do is
was it like that? Like, how long did it take for the feeling to come back?
um, maybe 3 days.
Okay.
Like 3 days, it came right back. Came right back. Yep. It came right back after 3 days. And even after it came back, the whole thing was let's treat so it don't happen again. So that's where this aggressive treatment came. Because now I'm being told if your face goes numb, then that means that it's spreading, it's getting worse. Your lesion's getting bigger. So let's treat, and keep it shrunk. The goal is for it not to get bigger. So here's the thing. Here's one of the problems I'm having. All of these doctors, right? All these doctors that saw me, not one of them did what she did. Even if they discovered, this is what makes all of them wrong. Because how is it that this lady, your colleague in the same profession you're in, was able to tell me? And you want to know what made me cry even harder? When she took her hands and said, I want no parts in what they've done to you. I'm taking you off of everything today. I don't want no parts. I will not write a prescription. I will not advise you to take anything. And I am removing the diagnosis.
Because it would be unethical for her or him to treat you and you don't have.
Hmm. She said, it's not worth my license. I'm not writing you a prescription. I'm taking you off everything. And now I'm crying so hard because I'm like, this woman is in front of me telling me I value my job, I value life, I value my patients way too much to play these games that these people played. She said doctors use this practice as a cult and they cover for each other. She said, you will not die from MS. Go live your life. I said, just like that. She said, just like that. So you gonna just dump that in my lap and I'm supposed to just go out and just walk away and say, nice meeting you. She said, yeah. I'm like, what about my mental health? Like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with that? I've been in your office for 15 minutes and you just dumped that in my lap and told me, have a good life. That I can't come back and see you because I don't have a neurological disease and that it would be insurance fraud because she would have to have a diagnosis in order for me to come and see her again. Okay, so who am I supposed to talk to about coming off all these meds? She said, your primary. Okay, so I'm not supposed to call these people and say, what did y'all do? Do y'all know I
But
just got undiagnosed?
allegedly,
Like,
the primary doctor is the one that sent you to them to begin with.
so he retired. The one, my primary, I had a different one. So my primary that sent me to that neurologist, we have actually spoken. Um, and he He had no, my primary, the one that I had, we actually spoke after the undiagnosis, and it broke his heart. He had no idea. He felt horrible. And it was sad because the primary that I had, when he retired, he referred me to this, my new primary, and both of them were like, what was so disheartening to them, they didn't, neither one of them went into a lot of detail, but what they did both tell me was that this was so disheartening to them because they said these were well respected neurologists, that they wouldn't believe that this would be even happening, that they would never believe that the neurologist that they referred me to, it's just devastating them. But they said also the neurologist that undiagnosed me is amazing and is known, all over the world. Just great medical people as far as they knew. So to hear that this was happening, they were sick. They were sick.
So when you left out of that office, what did you do going forward? How did you get through? Because now she's taking you off all this medication that you were taking. How do you get through that process and the mental part of it?
It was hard. It was terrible. My body instantly started going through withdrawals. So first the mental. Um During the appointment, I had my Bluetooth in my ear,
Okay.
and my husband called, and I just tapped it. You know how you tap and turn your phone on? I tapped my phone. I didn't say a word to him, but he could now hear, and I was crying. And he could hear what I was saying, but he couldn't hear what the doctor was saying. And I was saying, like, this is horrible. Like, they've ruined my life. And, I'm saying, I can't believe this. And why me? I didn't deserve it. And then I went to gratitude. Thank you, for being honest, and, just telling her, like, you don't understand how this makes me feel. Then I went to, okay, so what now? Are you going to put this in my chart? You're saying you're going to undiagnose me. How does that look? What does that look like? I mean, you're just saying you're undiagnosed. And what am I supposed to do with that? Am I supposed to just call everybody and say I don't have it no more? Like, how does this work? And she's like, yep, I will do a formal letter. I will reach out to send a letter to Medicare and Social Security and let them know you do not have MS and you're being undiagnosed, and the diagnosis will be removed from your medical chart. And I'm like, so let me ask another question, ma'am. I said, you're saying to me that these doctors knowingly lied and prescribed these medications? She said, yeah. I said, I'm going to need you to write that out just like that. So I'm walking to the car, and my husband is in my ear saying, what's going on? I said, let me call you right back. He said, what is happening? Let me call you right back. He said, what just happened? I said, give me 5 minutes and let me call you back. He said, okay. And I was outside and I went into worship. I went into a praise because something fell over me in that very moment to say, despite what these people did, you got to give God some praise.
He
In
allowed you to
this
live.
moment, you got to lift up your eyes because he kept you. This didn't have to happen today. So instead of you sitting here, what you gonna do first? And that was why I hung up, because I was in that parking lot yelling, and them people didn't know what was going on with me. They was looking around like I ain't care. And I drove home. I lived 10 minutes away. I drove home yelling, thank you, Lord. Thank you. I never called my husband back. I just worshiped all the way till I got home. And when I walked in the house, my daughter, my nephew, and my husband were standing there. And I was standing there crying. I couldn't even talk, couldn't open my mouth and say anything. And finally, I got the words, I don't have MS. And they, what? And my husband just standing there. I said, I just was undiagnosed. This lady said I never had MS and that the medications I was on was unwarranted. And my husband looked at me and he said, I'm so sorry. My daughter, she crying like, I can't believe this. And now my family, my mom, my sister, everybody is crying. Friends, I'm talking down to my nail tech. They knew the struggle, cried
Mhm.
so hard. It devastated us. And the sad part was, I started instantly going through withdrawals. I'm talking body rocking with pain. Pain so bad that I'm like, I got to get to a hospital. But then something's like, nope, can't go, can't trust nobody now. Can't go. Whatever you're going through, you can't trust nobody. So you're going to have to wait this out. You're going to have to stay home. So I called this neurologist that undiagnosed me back. And
Mhm.
I talked to the nurse. I said, listen, she going to have to see me. I don't know how or how she going to write it up. I don't know how she's going to tell this to Medicare or whoever. But this is not okay because now I'm calling my primary. And my primary is like, okay, but she undiagnosed you and took you off everything. I said, yeah, but she told me she couldn't see me no more. She said, well, what I'm gonna do? I, I, I didn't undiagnose you. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to treat you. What am I gonna give you? I don't know what meds to give you to tell you how to stop going through withdrawals from something that she took you off of. She said, no, you got to call her back. So now my mental health is really bad because I'm crying saying, how is it that every doctor has now walked away from me? Huh? Everybody. I got nobody now. And I called the doctor's office back, and the nurse listened to what I said. You don't get to dump this in my lap and leave me out here with all these withdrawals with nobody to talk to, nobody to deal with my mental health, nobody to care about how I'm going to get through this. She said, well,
No
here's what I'm going to do.
therapist. No.
Nope. They left me, just left me. And she said, you have an MRI scheduled. I said, yeah. So how am I supposed to get the results of the MRI? She said, well, I said, no. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to schedule me an appointment and you're going to put in there, I'm coming to review the MRI results. You said I don't have it. You're going to talk to me. You're going to prove I don't have it. And you're also going to talk to me about this um, withdrawal. So don't care how you tell the Social Security, whoever you tell, I really don't care. But I was in so much pain, literally couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't eat. I I couldn't take Tylenol. I couldn't take anything. So now I'm getting Bengay because it was that deep tissue pain, like I had fell from a roof.
So taking the Tylenol wasn't strong enough.
Mm-mm. Nope, wasn't doing nothing. And then at this point, I was kind of reluctant to say anything because I'm just like, they're gonna give me something I don't need. They just did it for 15 years. So now I'm toiling with, what do you do? Do you take the Tylenol and try to figure it out on your own, or do you call a medical professional and say, hey, you took me off of this, has got to be something? But I understand now she was more so like, look, I don't know what it's going to look like, and I can't give you nothing for the withdrawals. I've never had a patient I had to take off all these meds. So to give you another prescription on top of what I'm taking you off is not going to make sense. We need you to be off everything. Well, okay, you should have said that. That's then I wouldn't have been bothering you because I did end up going back. I made her see me. I told her, you don't get to do that. You don't get to dump that in my lap and then say bye, have a good day, and you deal with all of this on your own. And then my primary is telling me no, I got to come back to you, and you're saying no, you can't come back to me. Nope, nope, you're gonna have to talk to me. And she
So,
did.
so what you do going forward?
After the withdrawals,
How did you get through the withdrawals?
I suffered. I suffered. I prayed. I used Bengay. I would only use cream, any type of rubbing cream, but I wouldn't swallow anything because, again, the goal was to see exactly what was going to happen coming off the meds. I didn't know if I came off of all this medicine, if I was going to have a seizure, if I was going to end up, paralyzed, if, what was going to happen. So to add pills to that would just confuse everything. We needed me off of everything and to see how my body would respond. And so after 3 months, so April, May, June, by June, the pain was getting a little bit better. It was getting a little bit more tolerable. But I used cream every day, 7 days a week. I just rubbed down with cream. And it would take some of that pain away, but it would never remove it all. But I just pushed through it. I mentally had to get in my word and just remember, and it's so ironic, this is your name, that this is a purpose. There's a purpose behind this, Lorette. There's a purpose. So stop sitting here asking yourself, why me? And how come? And why me? There's a purpose. You have to ask God what that purpose is. And I just began to say, just give him praise. Just thank him. That's it. Don't look at this no other way. Give God the glory. And as I began to focus more on Christ and my praise and my worship, you can imagine your praise is a little different because you think about 15 and a half years, people that you don't know gave you medications, ultimately, that was supposed to take you out. But God said no. So I focused my thoughts on the bright side. And the bright side was he kept me. Yes, it was horrible. Yes, I suffered. I had a lot of bad days. But now I got purpose. And, finding an attorney, it was very discouraging. Looking for an attorney, trying to navigate the justice part of this, because that was always at the forefront of my head. You're not going to get away with this. You're not going to get away with doing this to me. And the more I reached out to attorneys here and kept getting the whole, sorry, nothing we can do, hope you get justice, it just wasn't sitting right with me. And I'm like, do people not really see what actually happened? They're looking at the surface part of, you had a diagnosis, you were treated for this diagnosis, and somebody realized you didn't have that. No, that's not cut and dry how that is. There was documentation that was falsified. I
Mhm.
was told I was dying. I was given medications to say they were slowing down the progress of me dying. I was lied when it said my MRIs were worse. That is premeditated. So, how do you get to tell me that they are covered by medical malpractice and statute of limitations? There is how, in what world is there a statute of limitations for attempted unaliving?
So what's the end goal? Do you feel like if you won this case, you would get a settlement and save other lives? Or is it you just want to raise awareness? What's more important to you?
For me, it's the awareness. It's my end goal is change the law. I don't care if I see a dime, never see a dime from these people. It doesn't matter to me. It's not going to erase the 15 years. It's not going to erase my suffering. It's not going to change how they violated me. But what I do want is a law that will protect people like me, a law that will hold these doctors accountable, a law that says it is what it is. You do not get to hide behind statute of limitations for purposely medicating someone. You don't get to do that. So my goal is with the Make It Right movement is to get a law put into place for people where it doesn't limit the amount of time they can sue a doctor or they have to discover that this has happened or there was a mistake made. That's not fair to the person. That's not fair. That's like me going in now to every doctor I need to go to and saying, okay, I want you to show, like, you're not going to trust them. Doctors are supposed to be trusted.
Mhm.
Even though you got a lot of people, oh, never trust a doctor, never. The Bible tells us to seek a physician. That's scripture. The Bible says for God to reveal things to us as well. And so when you have people that are put in a position like me, there has to be a way to protect us. So if these mm, doctors never give me a dime, my justice is going forward that we change this law. We get it out there, make it known that we not going to stand for these doctors to continue to use us as guinea pigs. And then when we find out, say too bad. There has to be change and these doctors have to be held accountable. And so that is my end goal. My end goal is justice for me is to change this law.
And I knew what you were going to say just from talking to you. But I want people to understand that money doesn't solve everything.
No.
Because even if you receive the funds, it doesn't fix what happened to you
Mm-mm.
if there's not a change in the law.
That's right.
And there's other people that probably have been affected the
Mm-hmm.
same way you have been. And if these people are still working in this field and allegedly doing the things that you're saying, then
Absolutely.
it's going to keep happening and it becomes a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you won and receive the funds, somebody else is still
Yep.
suffering.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad you pointed that out because when I was doing my research, you will see that 90% of all medical malpractice lawsuits are handled on the back end. They never go public. They
Mm.
always settle out of court because they need to continue to practice. And settling out of court gives you no exposure. You can keep doing what you're doing because now this person has gotten their settlement and has signed a NDA, and they're not going to disclose any information. That's not who I am. I'm not going to allow you to cut me a check and think I'm going to walk away and say, now you can go ahead and play with somebody else's life. Absolutely not. That's not going to
So,
happen.
what I would like for you to tell our audience how they can help with this movement.
Absolutely.
What can
So,
Pain to Purpose do and the rest of the world do to help you?
so the first thing is getting out there and putting the story out there to get people to listen and to see this whole medical industry for what it is. And in order to do that, I have to get my voice heard. I got to get my story out there. Um, I want to go to different churches and cities and states and talk to people and to get people to join this Make It Right movement. And in order to do that, I've created a GoFundMe because we know in order for change, you have to be heard. You got to have people. Um, and so to be able to travel, yes, I do have an attorney that is out of state to be able to get there, to be able to get to these different locations to meet with activists and meet with people who want to join this Make It Right movement. Um, to just donate, to support the GoFundMe, support the Cash App, support the PayPal in any way. Um, I often tell people one of the best ways to support is to pray. Pray for the movement. Pray that God
Absolutely.
opens the doors because I know without a shadow of a doubt that everything that I need, God is going to make sure and provide. And He's going to make sure. I always tell people God will bless somebody else to be a blessing to you. And that's like paying the purpose. Um, and so just join the movement. Start talking about it. Start talking about it with your family and pointing out this is really happening. Doctors are really getting away with this stuff. Um, and so as I said, donate to the Cash App, donate to the GoFundMe, um, follow the movement. I have promised that I want to take everyone on this journey with me, um, and that we stand together because it may not be your family, but I'm sure you may know a friend whose loved one died and they never got justice or questioned a diagnosis. Um, and so the fight is, you know, for us to educate the world. And I say the world because that's what I plan on doing. I plan on taking this all over and making sure there is change. So
Yes,
please support this movement.
yes. Now I have to ask you, what was your favorite scripture or quote when you were going through this? Or favorite scripture or quote now?
So I have a lot of scriptures,
Hmm.
and I'm glad you asked me this because I am a songbird. So anytime I would, talk I always had a song in my spirit. I knew scripture and I quoted scripture, but for me, it was a song. Um, I grew up singing. And so I would always keep Blessed Assurance. The hymn, Blessed Assurance, was one of my favorite songs. Um, and so for me, I will automatically go to start singing in the hospital room, in the ER room. And I would always keep a song in my spirit. Um, that's what got me through. Honestly, I have to tell you, music and me singing and me giving God, the praise. There's a song I grew up singing, and I remember being a kid at 8 years old singing "Yes, God is Real." That was a song, and it's so many. Like I said, it's so many. But for me, the scripture was there. But I promise you, from the ambulance ride, from the car ride, it was always a song. Always a song.
And,
So,
um, people sing based off what they've been through or what they've seen somebody else go through. They sing what they feel. So that's
mhm.
great. I love music.
It's my foundation. Like, m- I promise you, me and my twin sister started singing. Had to be when we were like 3. And with my dad being the pastor of the church, we were amazed as we grew up. He would let us listen to R&B. Now, mind you, we were only listening to it because a lot of the R&B allowed us to sing in different keys. We never had any professional training. We trained ourselves. So we would listen to the gospel on Sunday, and then we would record some songs and sing it. But then we would try to sing different people's songs, which gave us the ability to sing different keys. Then we would do the harmony. And her and I did that all our life. And so um one of the things that we do um banquets. And if I'm emceeing, I always do, if my pastor was a singing man, and whatever his phrases are, I put a gospel song to it and I sing it. And I go, if my pastor was a singing man, because music is my life.
Mm.
I grew up on hymns. I grew up in a Baptist church. And so that's what got me through.
So listen, we're gonna have you come back on another time, you and the twins, so you can sing for
Yes,
Pain's Purpose.
yes,
We gotta
absolutely.
come back together.
Yes, we absolutely will. We absolutely
Okay.
will. Yes,
And we
no.
will definitely support. We will definitely be posting your flyers and putting out your information when you get that to us so that we can support too over here. Is there
Thank you.
anything else you would like to say? You're welcome. Is there anything else you would like to say to our audience before we close out?
Just keep trusting God. Trust Him, believe Him,
Amen.
and know that He is God all by Himself.
Amen. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. We really appreciate it. We know that it will help a lot of people.
Thank you.
For our audience, do not forget at the bottom of the screen, you can help by paying, you could donate to her Cash App or her PayPal, and it's Make It Right Movement. It's at the bottom of the screen. We will also pin it for you. Do not forget, my books are on Amazon: Tears of a Shattered Heart, Wonderfully Made Affirmation Coloring Book, Fearfully Made Affirmation Coloring Book, and my newest release, Granny's House, is all on Amazon. We do have Pain to Purpose podcast t-shirts as well as tumblers. You can email me if you would like to be a part of Pain to Purpose podcast and be a guest. You can come on and share your story, or if you have a topic that you think will help the community, you can come on and talk about that as well. My email is creativesoul.business@gmail.com. And don't forget, it's creative without the E, okay? Remember, it's only pain until you discover your purpose and start your healing journey. And I'll see you next time.